Hello, and welcome to the Dell PowerConnect W-Instant installation video. In this video, we will cover an overview of PowerConnect W-Instant, a pre-installation checklist, an installation example where we will take a factory default Instant AP and configure employee and guest WLANs, and then we will cover the optional steps of integration with Airway for management and adding additional Instant APs. PowerConnect W-Instant utilizes a virtual controller architecture with a self-healing virtual controller instance that is distributed across all the access points in the cluster. It offers a centralized configuration and monitoring portal, so you have one place to go to view statistics and apply configuration to all access points in the cluster. PowerConnect W-Instant also offers centralized image management. Very similar to what you have with operating systems today, the cluster will periodically check for new software updates and allow you to download and install them from the cloud. Each PowerConnect W-Instant cluster can scale to a maximum of 16 access points and 256 clients. PowerConnect W-Instant also offers seamless Layer 2 roaming with firewall and authentication state synchronization between access points. This is crucial for applications like voice and video to allow you to roam between access points without any session interruption. And if your deployment later requires the power and feature set of the PowerConnect W controller-based architecture, Instant APs can be easily converted into controller-based APs. On the security side, PowerConnect W-Instant offers state-of-the-art enterprise-grade authentication and encryption, including 802.1x, WPA and WPA2 Enterprise, WPA and WPA2 pre-shared key, as well as a customizable captive portal for guest access. On the infrastructure side, Instant supports external radius servers as well as a built-in user database. For guest users, PowerConnect W-Instant automatically partitions guest traffic into a private guest VLAN inside the Instant cluster and provides DHCP services for those guests. Instant also provides network address translation for guest users after passing through the firewall. This greatly simplifies configuration on the infrastructure side, allowing you to easily and safely provide guest access on your network. PowerConnect W-Instant also contains a stateful firewall, where unique firewall policies may be specified for each SSID and are then applied on a per-user basis across all access points in the cluster. Instant also automatically classifies and prioritizes all common voice over IP protocols. On the intrusion detection side, Instant provides rogue AP detection and classification. Finally, PowerConnect W contains adaptive radio management. This technology allows the access points to be constantly scanning the air to choose the optimum channel and power assignment for your environment. The system will automatically avoid other Wi-Fi access points as well as non-Wi-Fi interference. However, during voice calls and periods of high load, the system will automatically pause scanning to give your users the best possible experience. Another feature of adaptive radio management is band steering, through which clients that are capable of operating in the 5 GHz band will be automatically steered into this band and away from the more congested 2.4 GHz band. Lastly, if your network contains a mixture of 802.11a, b, g, and n clients, airtime fairness will ensure that the performance of your high-speed clients will not be affected by these lower-speed clients. Although PowerConnect W-Instant is simple to deploy and manage, there are a couple of items you need to prepare or determine in advance. The first is how you plan to power the access points. Instant APs can be powered through the use of 802.3 AF power over Ethernet switches or injectors, or through the use of external power supplies which can be purchased separately. Next, you must have a DHCP server running on your network. And finally, if you are planning to use 802.1x, WPA, or WPA2 Enterprise, you must have a radius server. We will now go through an installation example where we will take a factory default Instant AP and configure an employee and guest WLAN. Okay, so I've taken my Instant AP out of the box, plugged it into my network, and powered it on. Now when an Instant AP is set to factory defaults, it will automatically advertise an SSID called Instant. So all you have to do is go and connect to that Instant SSID, and you'll be able to access the AP to provision the system. So we've clicked on Instant. Give it just a second to connect, and then in your web browser you can simply connect to any URL. Doesn't matter what it is, and you'll automatically be redirected to the Instant login screen. Instant has a default username of admin and a default password of admin, so ADMIN. And when you log in, you'll see the Instant UI. Now before we get into doing networks, there's a couple of housekeeping things we need to do. So we want to move over here to where it says settings in the top level here, and we'll click on that one. And the first thing we need to do is name our Instant cluster. So this is the name of the entire cluster of Instant APs. So I'm just going to call it my company. And then it's going to ask us for an IP address. This is the management IP address for the virtual controller, or for the Instant cluster. Individual access points will continue to get IP addresses from DHCP, and then they'll all share this static IP for use for management. So this is the IP address that you will connect to manage the system. So we're going to assign a static IP here. If you have a network time server, you can set that here. Otherwise, just set your time zone. And then the other thing we need to do is, under admin, we need to change the default password. So remember, it has that default admin password of admin. So we want to change that and make it something more secure. And once we've done that, we can hit OK. And after a second, you'll notice, so it's actually changed the name of the cluster. It's a good idea now to go ahead and connect to that static IP that you just set up, so you know that that's the address that you're using. So we'll come up here and we'll click on that IP, and we're going to connect to it. Now because we've changed IP addresses and we've changed the admin password, it's going to prompt us to log in again. So we're going to log back in with our new, more secure admin password. And now we're back in, and you can see we're using the static IP that we've set. So now there's one last thing we need to do before we get to creating networks, and that is to make sure that Instant is running on the latest version of software. You'll notice up here it says new version available. Instant will periodically go out to the cloud and check for new versions of software, very similar to what you get with operating systems today. So you can simply click on that when that label appears, and it will take you in. You can also do a manual check as well. So you can click on maintenance and click on firmware, and you can see that it'll list the current version of software that we're running. And you'll notice here under automatic it says new version is available, and you can simply click upgrade now. If this is blank, this button will read check for new version. So you can click the button and do a manual check for new software. If it finds something, it'll then change to this display here where it'll show you the version number with the upgrade button. If you're running the latest, it'll just say no new version found. So we do have a newer version here, so we're going to go ahead and kick off that upgrade procedure. So we'll click upgrade now, and a message will pop up to say after the upgrade, of course the APs will have to reboot to load this code, and of course the wireless will be down during that time, so to make sure you want to continue, and we will say yes. So we'll click upgrade now, and it will then go out and download its image from the cloud and upgrade and reboot. Okay, so the access point has completed its reboot, so I'm going to reassociate to Instant. You can see my computer has actually already done that. And then we're going to connect to our static IP. We're going to log in. And now we're back running with the latest software. And with that initial stuff out of the way, we can get down to creating some networks. So to create a new network, in the network area, click on the new link. That will bring up the new network dialog. You're going to create the SSID name. So this is the name of the network that your clients will connect to. So we're just going to call it employee. Usage employee voice and guest, so this is the employee network, so we'll leave it as employee. And then we get to client IP assignment. By default, this will place clients on the same network as the instant APs. If you want to create a separate VLAN on your wired network, you can specify a separate VLAN ID here, or you can have your wireless client segregated into an internal VLAN on the instant AP and run it that way if you wish, but most of our customers will leave it as default, so we're going to leave it that way for here. Next is authentication and encryption. So you have a couple of options here. Obviously you can do open, which is not recommended for employee access. You can do pre-shared key, which is one option where all the clients have the same key. Or you can, if you have a Radius server, you can do WPA or WPA2. And we are going to run the strongest level here, so we will set up our Radius server. So of course this is a Windows IAS system that I already have configured on one of my Windows servers, and the shared key that I have set up, and NAS in this case is optional, so I don't need that. So I'm going to hit OK. If you have a backup Radius server, you can add that here as well. And then the last piece, firewall policies. For the vast majority of our deployments, employee access is unrestricted, and so we're just going to leave that here. And so now you can see our employee network is created there. So now we're going to create a guest network, so we'll click on new, and I can wait for our new network dialog to appear. We're going to choose guest, and for primary usage we're going to click guest, and you'll notice it automatically selected virtual controller assigned. If you remember from the features area, Instant has the capability to segregate guest traffic into its own private VLAN inside Instant, provide network address translation, as well as firewall policy enforcement. So we're going to leave that as virtual controller assigned and click next. The next step is to determine if you want authentication to be required on your guest network. So the default is to require authentication. There is an internal database for Instant where you can create usernames and passwords for your guest users. If you don't want to deal with that, you can simply have a captive portal with an acknowledgement where they have to simply check a box that they agree with some policy that you might have set. Or if you have an external captive portal, which will be very few people, you can select that here. You can also simply bypass authentication completely and simply have a wide open network if you just uncheck that splash page button there. But we're going to go ahead and apply usernames and passwords, or require usernames and passwords. So you can see internal servers already selected here. We're going to click users and just show you how you create an account here. And of course you can later go through that through this users link here at the top once the system is running. One additional thing you might want to do on this page is actually customize the captive portal page. So you can simply adjust any of the items in here. You can simply click in here and change this. So you might say, welcome to my company network, and hit OK. You could change the background color of the page. You can, and then of course, edit all of the text. So your legal department may want to have specific verbiage that you want to add in here to this policy text. And at any time you can click the preview button and it will bring up a full screen page so you can see what that looks like. So once you've gone through all that, we can click next and continue on. And now the last step is to configure a firewall policy. So you could leave it as unrestricted, but you probably do not want guest users able to access your internal corporate resources. So we'll go ahead and click on network based here. And here's that default rule that says allow any to any destination. And we're going to go ahead and delete that one. And we're going to create some new ones. So the first thing we're going to do is create a rule that blocks traffic to our internal networks. So we're going to leave allow any, and then we're going to choose accept to a network. and then we're going to describe our networks here. So this is our internal network space. So in this example, 172.17.00/16 encompasses all of our internal networks. You're going to want to replace that network and IP and mask with your internal network, basically. And so what we've done is we're allowing anything except to our internal networks, which means we're allowing anything to the internet at this point. However, systems do need, or clients do need, a small amount of internal access. One of the things they need to be able to do is, for instance, do DHCP. And so in this case, because DHCP is being provided by Instant, they need to be able to access those services. For instance, if they need to do a repair on their card, renew their DHCP lease, reboot their machine or whatever, they need to be able to renew DHCP. So we're going to allow DHCP to all. And then the last piece we need to do is for DNS. So DNS is currently being provided by an internal server, so we need to permit them access to that. So we're going to allow DNS to a particular server, 172.17.1.34. And you'll see, because we did not have this rule here, this rule would block them, and so they would not be able to resolve DNS, and the network wouldn't function. So this is a pretty common guest access policy. You might want to make this more restrictive by limiting them to specific protocols, maybe HTTP and HTTPS only. It's up to you, but like I said, this is a pretty common one to do, where they can do anything outbound. If they need to do VPN or whatever, it'll still work. So we'll just click finish, and our guest network will appear. So now that our employee and guest networks are created, you'll notice there's still that default Instant SSID that we use to provision, and that network will stay up here until I disconnect from it. So now that the system's been configured, as soon as I disconnect this station from Instant, the system will automatically remove it for security reasons. So then we'll have just employee and guest. What that means is that if your employee SSID has been misconfigured for some reason, the radius server is not talking or something, or you've forgotten the key if you're doing pre-shared key or whatever, and you cannot get access to the employee SSID, the Instant SSID will be gone. And you'll need to connect to the wired network and then connect to your static IP, and you can web to that, and then you can fix your configuration. So make sure you're careful of doing that. So what I'm going to do now is going to go ahead and disconnect from Instant and connect to employee. So you can see that I've connected to employee, and the Instant SSID has been eliminated. So that concludes the common setup for Instant for an employee and guest networks. So what I'd like to do now is take you through a short little tour of the UI. One of the things to keep in mind about Instant is that you can effectively click on anything. So you can click on an access point list, and you'll notice at the bottom all the graphs will change and the details will change, and so you can see numbers of APs, rogue APs, interfering, CPU utilization at different time, client levels, throughput, memory. You can do the same thing for clients. So you can click on a client, and again, it'll give information about retries, all the access points that client's connected to, their signal strength, speed, what channel they're on, the access point they're on, what operating system they're using. So don't be afraid to just click on whatever. Same thing with a network. You can click on a network here, and it'll give you detail about the clients, the APs, that's going on there. If at any point you need to get back to the main page, you can just simply click on My Company or the virtual controller name, and that will take you back to the default home page. Additionally, as we talked about in the features section, should your deployment grow and you find yourself wishing to convert to a controller-based architecture, Instant APs can be easily converted into controller-based thin APs. To do that, simply click on the maintenance link and then the Convert tab. Enter the IP address of your mobility controller and click the Convert Now button. The access point will contact the controller, download the correct version of code, and become a controller-based thin AP. So now we're going to cover adding Instant to Airwave. So if you have Airwave installed in your network, you can use it to monitor and manage Instant. A couple ways to get to that here. One, you can just click the Setup Now link down here, or you can click on Settings and Admin, and Airwave will show up here. So the links will take you to the same place. Now, under Organization, the organization name that you create here is going to cause a folder and a group to be created under Airwave with that name. So we're going to do install video. Of course, the IP address of your Airwave server. And then it's going to ask you for a shared key. What this is actually doing is when Instant connects up to Airwave, it's going to automatically create a folder and group called install video, as I mentioned. It's also going to create a user role and a user called install video space admin. So whatever organization space admin. And the key that you type in here is going to be the password for that user account. That user account is going to be restricted to the install video folder and group. So if you have multiple sites and each site has its own IT person, you can give them this credential so they can log in and manage their Instant cluster through Airwave. So they would not have access to anything else within Airwave, within your deployment, just this one setup. So that's what this is doing here. Now, as I'll show you when we get into Airwave, the role is disabled by default. So a super admin or an overall admin within Airwave has to go enable it to make it work. But that's basically what this is doing here. So choose something fairly complex, standard user password kind of thing here. So we'll set this up and press OK. And you'll see the status now is changed to not connected. So it'll take a couple of minutes for Instant and Airwave to kind of get themselves set up for Airwave to discover Instant and all that. So we can go to our Airwave system now, and we'll wait for it to appear in the new devices count there. So you can just hit refresh a few times until that shows up. All right, so you can see here that new devices is 1, and so here's that the virtual controller. So you can click and hit add, and you can see if you click on folder, see there's that install video folder. You actually don't need to change that, because if you click add, you'll notice here it'll be placed into a folder based on the org string. So you can see it automatically fixed folder and group for you based on the org string that you set in Instant. And you can simply hit apply changes now, and then Airwave will go out and pull Instant and pull its config. In the meantime, I'll just show you that role and user setup. So under AMP setup, under roles, here's that install video admin. You can see enabled is no. So by default, this won't function. You as the Airwave admin will have to go and actually enable the role, and you can see that it only has access to the install video folder and group. And under users, there's the install video admin user account with the password that you set inside there, and you can see that it's not enabled yet, so you have to go in and do that. At this point, our system has gone and discovered itself. The up count has gone up, and if you click on install video, you can see now that it shows the access point and the virtual controller. So since we currently just have one AP in this deployment, it's listed here, and then the controller itself. So that's how you add Instant to Airwave. So the last piece we're going to talk about is adding additional access points to Instant. Turns out it's incredibly simple. Simply plug in additional Instant APs. They'll automatically come up, upgrade code to whatever version is being run by the cluster, and then join the cluster. So it's quite simple actually. And but one thing that will help you, that you probably want to do if you're going to be in a multi-AP network, is to give your access points more descriptive names. So you'll notice here the default name for the access points is simply the MAC address. So if you click on it, you can click edit and you can give it a name. So it can be something like AP1, or you can, something more descriptive like the room number it's in, or maybe the wiring jack it's connected to, or something like that. So if it goes down for whatever reason, you can, you'll have a better idea of what it is versus, a MAC address basically. So we'll go ahead and change that name, and then we'll go ahead and power on an additional AP and see what happens. So now you can see our second access point popped up here. So we can do the same thing here. We can simply highlight it and click edit, and we can give it its own name, AP2, and hit OK. And at any point, if you just want to go back to the home page of Instant, you're actually just click on the virtual controller name up here of my company, and that'll take you back to the home page. And so now you can see we have 2 access points, 2 networks. We're connected up on Airwave. Obviously the second AP will automatically be detected by Airwave and added in, and so there you go, Instant setup complete.